I am Kyung-Ah Seo, a sister from Hanmaum Church in Chuncheon. I want to emphasize that I'm a sister because I used to want to be a man, and I strongly supported homosexuality. But after I met the risen Jesus, these thoughts were totally overturned. I want to share with you how. I used to go to church when I was young. As a kid, I tried hard to live as the Bible said, but due to my family's financial hardship, I came to resent my parents and grew unhappy with the world. And I hated the fact that women were limited and discriminated against in the male-oriented society. I went through physical changes earlier than my peers. It was uncomfortable to have female features, and I wished that I could be born again as a man. Moreover, since I was young, I experienced sexual harassment like encountering perverts on crowded buses, so I felt even more cursed to be a woman. I am very shy and introverted by nature, so it was hard for me to stand before people. I hated my personality, and it made me want to be a man even more, since men are taught to be progressive and confident and to face challenges. Growing up, I had been a normal girl who liked dolls and playing house. But at some point, the way girls played wasn't fun anymore, and martial arts and war games seemed more fun. I didn't like obedient or weak personalities. I wanted to be confident, capable, and respected, even as a female. Most girls remove the shoulder pads from their school uniforms, but I added extra shoulder pads to look tougher. The way I talked and acted became more and more manly. In 10th grade, I entered the cross-dressing contest at my school. For the contest, I wore a leather jacket and shades and held up a gun to look like the Terminator. There were times when girls approached me with feelings of more than just friendship. However, I liked men. If I could choose my gender, I wanted to choose to be male. The type of men I liked were masculine, and I wanted sons. There's a myth that you'll have a son when you take the last piece of food on a plate, so I always fought to grab the last piece. Ever since I was young, I liked watching films and animation. It's because I thought I could get various knowledge, ideas, and historical facts without personally experiencing them. So the media greatly influenced my thoughts and values. Particularly, I got excited and intrigued when watching films that dealt with male homosexuality. Since I like the male gender, I really like films where the main characters were charismatic and attractive men, and these were not the effeminate men we usually expect gay characters to be. At first, the idea of homosexuality felt strange and uncomfortable, but this forbidden fruit or pleasure from deviation attracted me. It started as a small curiosity, but before I knew it, I was falling much deeper into it. Because I watched many films beautifying homosexuality, I began to think that it was just one of many ways to express love. And because the world forbade it, it seemed all the more tragically romantic. Homosexuality includes the physical act of the relationship, but I tried to cover that up by using the term platonic love. I came to think that love was just a union of two souls, that you could fall in love with a person who was compatible with you in heart and mind regardless of gender. Whether the relationship was heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual, I just wanted to see it as a love between two individuals. Now I see that the relationship could have stopped at the level of friendship or respect, but I thought that where the heart went, the body also had to go. Though I thought this way, I tried hard to live a Christian life until 12th grade. I was like that outwardly, but I could no longer oppress the questions and dissatisfaction inside me. The worldly knowledge I gained began to conflict with Christian values. I began to think that religion discriminates against people and that it was made by people with outdated minds. After going through such a rebellious time, I completely left the church when I went to college. Then I majored in philosophy, which taught me to doubt constantly. I was no longer sure about God's existence, and it was so intriguing to hear claims that denied Christianity. So I turned my back on God and lived like the prodigal son. In college, I could fully express the desires that were oppressed all my life. I wanted to show that women could do all the things that men did. So I took part in every school event and drank to a degree I could barely handle. I thought it was a discrimination to protect women, so I argued that all women should serve in the military. I even applied to the military academy. I was very interested in feminism and social reforms, and I thought that they could change the world. Due to this, no one saw me as a woman. I was treated like a man and teased as a long-haired rocker. However, such reactions didn't bother me. Rather, I felt like I was being accepted as another human being. Since I really wanted to be a man and had gay fantasies, at what point I wanted to have a transgender operation so that I could love a man as a man. Although I didn't act upon my desire, I was pretty much a gay man in my mind. If I became a man and loved another woman, that would be considered a heterosexual relationship. But I wanted to be a gay man. I thought that made me a true homosexual. Though I didn't have a transgender operation, I still advocated homosexuality. There was a TV show in 2010 about a gay male couple. I watched the show many times, including the reruns. The family members who were against their relationship were portrayed as very ignorant people, but the supportive family members were portrayed as logical and righteous. Back then, I taught my 6-year-old daughter that she could choose to marry either a man or a woman, and I proudly believed that I was very enlightened and progressive. However, later, when I believed in Jesus, I told her that I had been wrong. Living a life apart from God, I thought I'd be free and happy if I lived according to my belief. However, looking back at my past 10 years, my life was hell. The worldly knowledge I idolized made me conclude that there was no right answer. I couldn't find happiness in my family and got disappointed in people. My hope in changing the world through social reforms faded as well. Later on, I hated everything. I just watched TV all the time at home. I had so many worries and struggled with depression and insomnia. Then I began to think about suicide. At the lowest point of my life, the mother of my eldest child's friend invited me to her church, so that's how I stumbled into Hanmaum church. At first, I was wary, but after the worship service and fellowship, I realized that things were different here. The church members had great confidence in the word and seemed to know something I didn't. I got very curious. All this time, I had many questions about Christianity. First, I wanted to verify if God really exists. And these people were saying that there was proof of God's existence. They said God had given us proof so that everyone could believe. But the resurrection sounded so insignificant to me. I was expecting some kind of a sudden enlightenment or mysterious experience. But they explained that when your faith was based on your experiences, it could easily be shaken. But you could believe the resurrection based on historical records and what the disciples said. I still had a lot of doubts and wondered, what if history was made up and the disciples were crooks? These thoughts kept coming. Then one day, I had a dream where I was sinking into a big swamp. The swamp was full of filthy things like sewage. But somehow it didn't smell or look dirty to me. And then I saw a rope in front of me, but I kept thinking, can I trust this? What if the rope is rotten? There was nothing else around me, and I was about to die, but I was having these foolish doubts. That's the first time I wondered if I might have a mental condition of constant doubting. Days later, the lady from church I was talking to said, whether you believe it or not, it is a historical fact. At that moment, I realized something. It was like I was refusing to believe the fact that 1 + 1 = 2. Whether I understood or not, fact was fact and truth was truth. The basis of faith was not me. History was the basis of human civilization, and I couldn't deny it just because it was hard to believe. The acts of God were not things that human beings could understand with their limited minds. Just as the Israelites could live when they looked up at Moses' staff, we could believe by looking at the proof that only God can give. However, me, being my own Lord, did not seem like such a terrible sin. But when I saw from God's perspective, I realized that He couldn't possibly let us suffer and die apart from Him because of this sin. He had loved us so much that He had made us in His own image. Therefore, He had to send His only Son, because this sin could not be solved by anything else. The Almighty, who could create or destroy the whole universe with His word, had died for this sin. Me, being my own Lord, the sin of the judging things however I wanted was such a terrible sin that God had to be killed for it. One day, as I prayed, a sin came into my mind. I have 2 daughters, and a serial killer kidnapped one of them and brutally murdered her. When the criminal was caught, he was a psychopath who felt no remorse. Could I let my other daughter be executed in place of this killer whom I'd rather shred to pieces? How could I do something like that? I thought as I prayed and wept. Then my 3-year-old daughter, who was next to me, started to cry, and I imagined her saying, "Mom, do I have to die? Mom, I am so scared." But I'll go, Mom. Words could not express the heartbreaking pain of seeing your child facing death in obedience. He saved us in such a way, but I'd refused to repent, saying things like, "Who told you to die for me? If you were going to do that, why did you even create us?" I was so rebellious, unmoved, and devil-like. But it was none other than the Creator who had died for someone like me. Unlike what I used to think, love was more than just a special intense feeling. I couldn't do anything else but to surrender to this true love, which moves someone give up his life even for his enemies. If He gave us His life, He gave us everything. Someone like Him would not tell us harmful things. His commands and His law had all been His love for us. Amen. I began to see what homosexuality truly was. It was in reality just a game of emotions designed to satisfy your lust. God had created the universe in the perfect way, and if you are not living according to His design, you are already in a cursed state. What homosexuality inevitably did was to destroy the family which God gave us, and to turn the holy temple meant to create life into a tool of depravity. I realized what a terrible sin it was to call it normal, and I surrendered to God's love. Then I had no regrets about giving up homosexuality. Amen. Later, I found the Bible verses about the devil putting thoughts into a person's heart. I realized that the devil leads people astray in the most convoluted way by using the media to plant intriguing feelings about homosexuality in them. Of course, it was me who had chosen to hold on to those thoughts by being my own Lord. However, once I realized who was behind it, I stopped watching TV, animation, and movies that I used to love. Although I didn't practice homosexuality, it is said that having an adulterous thought itself is adultery. In fact, I was worse than the homosexuals. I boasted that I could convince normal people to support homosexuality. My heart was burdened at the thought of God dying for someone like me. Although Jesus forgave all my sins, I could not forgive myself. It was because I was oppressed by my so-called conscience, but I was making Jesus' sacrifice meaningless. Pretending to be good and conscientious was actually being prideful. It was my sin of not believing that Jesus fulfilled everything. What God really wanted was for me to realize that my sins were cleansed by the blood of the Almighty, that my old self had died, and that I could live freely and receive His love. When I understood God's true intention, I was set free from the guilt I had. Also, God gave us everything abundantly in addition to the eternal life we received through Jesus. In the past, I complained about everything, including gender, situation, looks, and personality. I am so grateful to now know that I am precious enough for Him to have bought me with His own blood. Amen. In a worldly sense, I don't have much. But because Jesus is my Lord, I believe His word, which says that I have everything. Amen. Once I realized what kind of love I received, my heartaches were gone. I stopped blaming others, and I could even love my enemies. All I had to do was to believe that I was a new creation through the resurrection. Amen. Though I was not the best mom, it would have been possible to understand the Father's heart if I did not have the gift of children. It was scary to think that I could have had a transgender operation or have lived a homosexual life without my own children. I used to protest and ask why homosexuality was bad. I argued that it was love, and I rebelled against God. But now I've received Jesus in my heart as my Lord, and I know the truth. Homosexuality is not destiny or personal taste. It was one terrible result of their sin of being my own Lord. Amen. If God hadn't rescued me, I would still be sinking in its swamp, which goes against God's order of creation, while thinking that I was superior and enlightened. Now I believe that only God is true, and that He is true love. Amen. I no longer wish to be a man. However, I found a way to live my dream and live a best life. If I could live only one day, I will live the best life by living for the Lord and the gospel. Thank you.